Back to East Texas now. I'm your host, Leo Cavetto, and as you know, we've been doing plenty of interviews this past few weeks in the lead up to the Texas primaries. And today we are going to be talking with one of those candidates. He is running in the Republican primary for governor. And let me just go ahead and make sure we got everything here to go. All right, there we go. All right, so we are going to be talking with Stephen Samuelson here. He is running for the Republican nomination for governor. Stephen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. So, you are running for governor, as we mentioned already. And let's go ahead and start this interview off by asking the very simple question: why are you running?
That's actually a very interesting and long story. Um, Pretty much it started about a year ago. Uh, I went in front of a school board to report corruption and violations against students' medical rights, whistleblower protection violations. We did the whole school board issue, went through the level 3 process, and I stepped up in front of the microphone at the local school board and they muted my microphone. So when that happened, I filed a writ of mandamus. It's a legal document that compels a government entity to do their job or address something that they didn't do properly. And through that process, it was pulled from state court, and now it's in federal court where I'm arguing the merits of our First Amendment rights in the digital domain. And at one school board meeting, because I kept going month after month, and at one school board meeting, they stated that they had problems balancing the budget. And that didn't make a lot of sense. So I contacted a couple of my buddies up in Austin, and they handed me a few bills that was signed into law. And we noticed a lot of money coming out of the school districts through the Texas Foundation program. And then my ADHD kind of kicked in, and I started going through every single one of the bills. And I started posting my summaries on Facebook. Well, Facebook banned my account from reporting those summaries. So then I created a website. And in the website, I break down every single House and Senate bill from author, sponsor, what the bill was originally designed to do, to the amendment phases, which change the bill's meaning, pretty much the poison pills, so to speak. I also listed in there who testified to it, how it benefits them, to also include the financial reports and a link going directly to the Texas legislators page. Now, in order to make sure my biases weren't my own, I contacted every sponsor, every author, along with their staff, and asked questions about those poison pills. And if it was a green bill, I did categorize between green, yellow, and red. If it was a green bill, I would say, congratulations on writing a great bill, and I'll see what else you have to do. If it was a yellow or red, I would identify what made it that, and I'll start asking questions. Now, either one of three things happened. Either one, the legislatures stated, yeah, we recognize the problem. Thank you for addressing it. We will fix it next session. Or they stated, well, they didn't answer at all. Or the third one is that they kind of misled. I don't want to say lie, but they definitely tried to mislead on some of the red bills. And that led into really good conversations with the legislators about the bills themselves. They asked me how I would do things differently, how I would change the bill, and I gave them my opinions. And after a little while, a few of them stated that my ideas were really, really good, that I should run for Congress or I should run for Senate. And my response was, well, I just created a website showing all the good bills, all the bad bills, who was being lobbied, all that information. Do you really think that legislators would treat me as an equal? They honestly answered no. But one legislator, after I showed them my initiatives, well, at the time they were just my ideas, they ended up turning into my initiatives. He stated that the ideas were really, really, really good. And that even if I don't run for legislature, that I should run for the office of governor because my ideas were so good that they were governor level and that they would help the people so much. And I would be put into a position where I can make it sure that the initiatives see the light of day and give the idea to Texans that even if I'm not elected, the ideas and the blueprints of my ideas can still be given to legislators to say, why can't we do this? So I think it was in that aspect where I wanted to take power back and actually try and give it back to the people by just showing them that there was another way.
Now, before we get into talking more about your campaign, I also want to talk about your background. You mentioned how you got politically involved starting about a year ago, but even before that, you say on your website that you joined the military at the age of 17, and this was in January 2001, and you ended up serving for a decade. What led you to join the military?
Um, well, I was from a military family. Both my parents were military. My dad retired sergeant major. My mom retired, I believe, as a staff sergeant. She served in 20 some odd years. My dad was also, I think, 30 years in the military. I traveled all around the United States. I saw different family lives. I saw how the military can have a great benefit. It can redirect individuals with interesting past. And for me, joining at 17, I felt that that was the best course for me. Um, I wanted to not be stuck where I was at. I didn't want to stay where I was at, and I wanted to serve my country. And I could have joined the police, like my grandfather and my uncles. They were state police officers, great profession. But for me, I wanted to do something bigger. I wanted to see the world if I could. I wanted to get an experience that would be unlike any other. And I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to serve my country.
And I find it very interesting. You joined in January 2001, and we all know what would happen 9 months later. Tell us how it was to be in the military on the day when the September 11th attacks happened and how that changed the trajectory of your service.
Well, I was actually still in high school. When I joined, I was still in high school as the split op program. So I was able to go through basic training my junior summer and then AIT my senior summer. When that happened, 9/11, I just came back from basic training. Pretty much I had the death stare from every single one of my classmates and my teachers. They would, as I was walking down the halls or when I was stuck in that classroom during that period, I had everyone staring at me. And the only thing I did was I contacted my first sergeant. I asked information as to what I needed to do, what I needed to be prepared for. And he was like, at the moment, you're still in high school, son, just be prepared. You're going to get deployed very soon. And I did, but I was deployed in 2004. So I had a little bit of time. But pretty much I knew, even though I was in peacetime at that time when I joined, I knew that there was always a possibility of me joining or me being deployed overseas. And it was one of those things that comes with the territory and the job. It's just a matter of when, not if.
And now tell us about your time stationed abroad, because you said you were ultimately deployed to the Middle East in 2004. What did your time in the military teach you, and how did service shape you into the person you are today?
Well, I was an information systems analyst when I joined the military. So pretty much the jobs that I was doing was database engineering, getting information so that way I would like when I was overseas, it was in Camp Arifjan before I was eventually doing other things. But in Arifjan, my main job was to take in casualty information, to take in troop movements. We had a system that I was able to data process all the information into, updating it, and then give reports to the executive branch. For those of you that would be colonels, generals, about troop movements, where everything was, so that way they can make the decision. So being around them taught me how to lead and what to lead and to take care of soldiers. And that eventually led from me moving from that system to working with TCNs, third country nationals, to eventually being sergeant of the guard at a mail terminal, and at the same time helping other agencies train um, uh, villagers that would come in, and we would teach them how to fight so that way they can fight for their own country. That skills led me into being stationed with the 98th Division out of Rochester, New York. We oversaw the tri state area. The NCO Academy out of Fort Dix saw my potential and loved what I did, so they tasked me from the 98th Division to the 98th or to the NCO Academy at Fort Dix. And unfortunately, at the Fort Dix assignment, we found out that I was exposed to a nerve agent that paralyzed my diaphragm, and I was being med boarded. And they transferred me from Fort Dix NCO Academy after being there for 2.5 years to being at the Southwest Information Operations Command here in San Antonio, while at the same time dealing with the Wounded Warrior Battalion and my out processing, which took roughly around 2.5 years.
All right, now let's get into the issues that you listed on your website. And first, I got to note your website is incredibly thorough, much more thorough than many of the other candidates that we've spoken to. Lots of bullet points and lots of issues you discuss on your website. I'm going to try and focus on some of the things that stood out to me, some of the more important issues here. Let's begin with energy. You on your website highlight the number of inactive and underperforming oil wells in Texas. What is your plan for increasing oil output?
You're talking about the Texans First Fuel program. I got that idea from, all right, so what we didn't really talk about is after I got out of the military, I got a degree in psychology and then a ministry license. And for the last 10 years, I've been advocating for individuals suffering from extreme amounts of trauma and suicide. And my job has been to go out to them and bring them back. So each one of my initiatives is based upon things that I have seen out in the field dealing with everyday Texans. And the field program actually came up from when I was talking to a bunch of oil workers. They were stating that they were finding jobs, but the companies in which they were being hired to would pretty much do the work for a couple months and then the company would go under and take the money, and the people, the workers, would be kind of left with nothing and finding another job and another job. And we came up with an idea of targeting orphan wells to revitalize them. If the well is not able to be revitalized, we cap it. If it can be revitalized by fixing it in whatever means is best, then we don't take away property rights, we don't take away mineral rights, but the fuel then goes into the refineries. The refineries then output the fuel, and we can give credits to first, starting off with emergency service fleets all across Texas. Start small, build up. The idea is if we can lower down the cost of monthly fuel costs for emergency service fleets, that extra money can go into the communities. That will also pay into the system so that way we can target more orphan wells. The more wells we get online, the more oil that goes to the refineries, the more tax savings we give to emergency service fleets. Once the emergency service fleet's oil or gas incentives reaches to the point where it's no longer affordable, or we can lower it down no more, any extra fuel then bleeds into the Texas system, meaning this: if we can bring enough oil wells online and enough fuel to go through the system, we can start targeting the civilian market, not take it over. I don't want to deal with OPEC and all them. It's more of a parallel system that benefits Texans and Texans only. So that way, starting off, maybe it's 5 gallons a week at 5 cents off. And then eventually, when more oil wells come up, we can increase the amount of gallons per week as a use it or lose it system, while at the same time lowering down the cost at the pump. That's the idea. I've already transferred my idea to a bunch of oil guys, landmen, people that work in the industry. They like the idea for what it is because it's a constant stream, it's a consistent workforce, it brings oil back into the Texans. With the whole idea of Texan oil should benefit Texans first. But it's a prong system that's, like I said, starts off slow, builds up, targets emergency service fleets first, with the eventual goal of entering into the civilian market, the retail market, for Texans only, of course.
Now, apart from oil, where do you stand on alternative energy? Would your administration invest more in things like solar and wind energy production?
Wind is good, but it also leaks a lot of oil. If you've ever been at the bottom of a wind farm, you'll see that there's a lot of pooling of oil. It uses a lot of lubrication, um, which is It's bad and good. Um, Also, the solar systems are good as well, but they use rare earth elements and they can cause its own issues. Some of my ideas, for example, like the Texas Power Independence Initiative, is more designed to focus on the refineries that are aging out, they're old. We can upscale them. We can retrofit them with newer technologies. I know a couple of individuals were talking about building whole new systems, but they don't realize that the turbine systems that we were using have now been outsourced out of country. And right now it takes about 8 years, 5 to 8 years to get new turbines to build a whole new system. If we retrofit them with different technologies, and I list them within my initiatives. I don't like slogans and I really hate taglines because they do really good at addressing the problem, but there's no solution. For each one of my initiatives, at the very bottom, there's a PDF that goes into great detail about how we can get it done and what exactly it is that I'm talking about. Um, but retrofitting our old or aging fuel systems, and also looking into the future. And at the very bottom of one of my initiatives is the thorium energy initiative. Now, I like that one because it's an energy system that Texas can actually benefit from without using uranium. Don't get me wrong, I like uranium. I just don't like the fact that if it goes boom, it will take out an entire city when there's safer alternatives. Thorium can do that right now. Currently, we already mine for thorium, but it's a byproduct when we're researching for rare earth elements, and we just toss it off to the side. There's we used to have a thorium reactor here in the United States back in the late 60s. I know India is constructing its own thorium energy, China, and I think Japan, and I heard Switzerland might be doing one as well. If we can do the same process, but here in Texas, because we have an independent electrical system, ERCOT, then we can have our own energy source that can last us decades. We can mine for the material here in Texas. We can refine it here in Texas. We can manufacture it here in Texas. And we can have thorium plants that are about the size of a football field right here in Texas. And it can produce the same amount of energy as nuclear. And in fact, I think right now we are currently using 16 megawatts of energy. And according to a lot of the bills that I was reading, we're expected to reach about 30 megawatts of energy within the next 10 to 15 years. We're going to need huge sources of energy that is not going to outprice the average citizen. And I believe thorium can do exactly that. I think it can stabilize our energy system and our energy grid needs for the near future. It's going to take time, it's going to take extra research, but I think that's the way to go.
Now, moving on from energy, let's talk about housing. On your website, you call our state's housing system, quote, outdated and unable to keep up. In your view, what needs to change?
There's a lot of regulations that are coming down that are slowing down the building of houses, but one of the biggest issues that I've been informed of is the workforce. In order to build a house right now, it takes 3 to 4 years. I know the house that we just had built a couple of years ago, even though it's in a nice community, it still took them about 3, 4 years just to build it. And there was constant delays, and it was always workforce delays. One of my initiatives, like you said, the affordable housing, is we create a system where we can build the foundation wherever we need to, but create a manufacturing style of building the homes in a secured area, build it quicker, build it faster using alternative resources like hemp or hempcrete that can be grown within 9 months instead of using traditional lumber, which can take upwards of 7 to 20 years. Not substituting all of it, but a decent amount of it. Texas is really good for growing that, so we can create our own source of wood here in Texas. That will reduce costs overall, especially with taxes. I believe there's 40%. What was it? There's a tariff on Canada right now for lumber coming in, and we receive, I believe, 40% of our lumber from Canada. So if we can offset that cost with hemp and other products, then that can reduce the cost of housing, that can reduce the cost of building a house, and it can lower down the time frame in which to build it. Build everything within warehouses or facilities, and then transport them to location, place them down, anchor them down, and now we have a fully functional house for an individual to move into, depending on where we need to move it to.
Now, when it comes to healthcare, you say it should be, quote, predictable, transparent, and affordable. What is your plan to ensure that healthcare in our state meets these goals?
Yeah, that one was a fun one to deal with. A lot of rules, a lot of regulations. Talked to a lot of insurance guys within my field from just talking to them, and they gave me a couple of pointers as to where to go, what can work, pretty much from the inside out. One way we can do it is kind of like how the VA obtains its supplies, is we Texas can use its buying power to buy in bulk of supplies that communities ho- uh, hospitals and rural clinics need. We can go back, trace back 5 years as to everything that they use so we can forecast what they'll need. Texas can buy it at a lower cost, sell it to those communities, those hospitals at a cheaper, reduced cost, and mandate that when they give it to the people or sell it to the people, it's at cost as to what they bought plus a small percentage. My idea is to focus on uh, making sure that the people see what they're paying for. And at the end, for the people to be paying the doctors and the nurses and the staff for the services that they receive. So that way it's cheaper for them to go to a doctor or a physician's assistant or a nurse to identify their medical needs instead of waiting until the last minute because they're always afraid that the cost of them just seeing a practitioner is going to be more than they can ever expect to pay for.
Now, Texas is one of just a handful of states that have not yet adopted the Medicaid state expansion. Would you be in favor of expanding Medicaid within Texas?
It's not a bad idea. There's just a lot of fine tuning. To be honest, I would prefer if we can keep it within Texas and lower down the cost from what Texas can provide before we start reaching into federal hands. Um, I know some of the insured individuals that I've talked to is they don't mind going federal. It's just that once they go federal, it's hard to pull yourself back out. And there's a lot of costs and hidden fees within it. So every change that we make through medical, we have to look at the cost benefits versus what are the obstacles that we're going to deal with and what would be the downfalls of it. And for every single medical issue, there's always an opposite piece to it.
Now, sticking with healthcare here, what is your plan for keeping rural hospitals open and bringing facilities to healthcare deserts? I know this is an issue that matters to some of those here in East Texas, where some healthcare facilities are, a whole metropolitan area away from their hometown. So, what is your plan for addressing the needs of rural healthcare?
Well, lower down the cost of supplies will definitely help with individuals. Telehealth has been able to provide a lot of work for up-to-date individuals seeking immediate services that can be addressed right away, and then finding rural community and hospitals. I know incentive-based institutions have used physician's assistants. I've heard nurses state that that have 6-year degrees that want to be not under a doctor's purview, so that way they can address medical needs. I've heard probably about, geez, 13 or 14 different ways that we can address rural communities by bringing responsible healthcare workers into those communities. What we do here a lot is roving nurses that get paid more than actual nurses that are in one spot that choose to stay in their one area. Um, I think we need to address the pay gap from that. I think we need to incentivize nurses and doctors to go to rural communities. I think we need to build bridges between what I see and what we all see with insurance costs, and creating a system that can best benefit both the people and the systems. The one thing I do hear a lot of complaints about is that healthcare is becoming more privatized and becoming more expensive. I've seen a couple of things that might work, but there's also a lot of drawbacks. And what works in East Texas might not work in West, and what works in South Texas might not work in North. And a lot of bills that are being shown kind of try to fit a round peg into every single hole they can get without realizing the broad implications of what they're actually doing.
Now, another thing you mentioned on your website, I'm pretty interested in personally. It is your support for a high-speed rail network, and that's something that I think a lot of the candidates running for state office this year they haven't quite talked about it. Now, you're probably aware that previous proposals have either failed to get off the ground or are still in the planning stages. I know there was the attempt to build a network uh, connecting DFW, I think, to San Antonio and Austin, and then now there's talk of doing a high-speed rail network from Dallas to Fort Worth. But again, still in the planning stages or just haven't gotten off the ground. How would your proposal for an HSR be different?
Mine's a little bit different because it's using an elevated system instead of on the ground. From what I've been reading and from a couple of individuals that have spoken to me about it, is that when you use eminent domain to take people's land, it stops the individual from using that land completely. They can't use it for cattle, they can't use it for agriculture. They're literally stuck because a high-speed rail system is literally going right through their property. We can change that by either going underground, which is a boring system, which will cost a lot of money, or we can try a system that's above the ground, like a high-speed rail system that's elevated, like how Japan does it, or a couple other countries. If we have it elevated, it'll cost a little bit more than if it's on the ground, but it won't take people's land. It will allow the landowners to continue access to their property to use for agriculture or for livestock needs. It doesn't disrupt the fauna or flora of the land. Its impact, its ground impact is significantly less. And at the same time, if we can actually get it to approved and working, when people use it, they'll be able to see all of Texas in its glory and see what these landowners are fighting to protect and why it's actually useful and why Texans will actually want to see all of Texas. And if they see what it's being used for, I think Texans will have more of a feeling of grounding towards their land itself by actually just seeing it instead of just knowing about it. And if we can connect all the major hubs, Corpus Christi, Houston, Houston to Dallas, Dallas to Austin, Austin to San Antonio, to Houston to El Paso, we can get people transported from city to city relatively quickly instead of flooding up the roads and building these monolithic road systems and highways and freeways. I think it will be a lot better for the everyday Texan and for transportation of goods and services from one city to another, especially since it takes what 14 hours to drive from Beaumont all the way to El Paso. I mean, I'm driving from San Antonio to El Paso this tomorrow, and it's about an 8-hour drive. Can you imagine being able to make that trip and only taking 3, 4 hours? I think that would be fantastic.
Now, perhaps the nation's most high-profile high-speed rail project, the California high-speed rail, as we all know, has been plagued by numerous delays and funding problems, and it's blown past its original budget several times over. How
Mhm.
would you avoid similar pitfalls?
By creating a system within itself that is modular. So once the pylons are set up and built, all that's matter is setting up a modular system that tacks on to the next lane of the system. Instead of spending hundreds of millions of dollars on litigation and payouts for eminent domain, that issue becomes less of an issue, especially since it's now elevated. By having a modular system that can create the tracks and then install them while they're elevated, I believe should make the system quicker and easier to build than just trying to do it straight on the ground and taking people's land and then transporting the system over. At least that's what I've been informed by several subject matter experts.
Now let's talk about some other issues more pertinent to East Texas. The issue of water rights and groundwater pumping has been a hotly contested issue in our region. Where do you stand on it?
Well, I do have a water scarcity and resilience initiative, but my hydroponics initiative also kind of ties into that. Right now, we are spending a lot of our water supply on agriculture. Now, the problem with that is you're spending thousands upon thousands of gallons of water and spreading it over open land that the water eventually evaporates, not to mention the pesticides, herbicides, and atrazine that's being dumped into our system. Hydroponics can definitely work with that. It will reduce the amount of water that's needed for the facilities. That way we can control, we can clean out the water before we're ever dumping it anywhere else. Also using AWGs, atmospheric weather generators. There's an individual named Moses West, I believe his name is. He's a he's a gentleman out of Chicago. He's a retired veteran. He deals with AWGs like this, create a whole new system, worked it out of Flint, Michigan, and it can produce hundreds of thousands. He stated on his website, 100,000 gallons of water per day on one facility. If we can use those into a lot of rural facility or rural communities, that will take care of a lot of the wastewater issues that we're experiencing and that you're experiencing, while at the same time having those AWGs on schools, municipal buildings, so that way, no matter what, our children and the elderly and everyday citizens can have access to water that's constantly coming in and being pulled from our atmosphere. Since that's how AWGs work. It's clean water, it's directly from the atmosphere, it doesn't affect the aquifers or the streams. So it's more about diverting how we obtain the water instead of just wasting the water from the aquifers themselves. I also do believe in desalination plants, but that's going to work more for the coastal lines. But we can transport that water inland as much as possible, and and then a lot of people question about the energy source, and that's kind of where retrofitting the power grid and eventual thorium energy could help with creating the energy needed in order to sustain that. And then a lot of people are going to talk about the data mining facilities and the AI centers that use tremendous amounts of water. And yes, I agree that they can, and that there are a lot of systems right now that are being incorporated that are closed loop systems that don't use massive amounts of water and it stays within the system itself. There are some data centers that are choosing to go underwater, so that way they have a constant stream of water, and any water that is evaporated goes directly back up into the stream, into the stream of water that they use. So my ideas are more along of like out of the box solutions for problems that we're experiencing to try to redirect the stream of problems into a way that we can actually solve.
And now let's talk about growth. Texas, as you know, is a state that is just exploding in population. I'm originally from the city of Frisco, which is one of the fastest growing cities in the country. DFW has been experiencing this incredible growth, but here in East Texas, maybe on a smaller scale, but we have also been growing by quite a lot. Just to give you an idea, according to population estimates from the Census Bureau, Smith County, where Tyler is, has grown by around 16,000 people just since the last census in 2020. In Van Zant, that's 6,000. Henderson County, 5,000. How would you, as governor, help to support our growth as a region, East Texas, and to support the growth of the state as a whole?
Well, we need job growth. Each one of my initiatives is going to bring in hundreds of thousands of jobs. I have an education plan that focuses on those jobs and trying to change how we teach and what we teach. Um, we need to address water issues, as we already stated, and I have an idea for that. We need to address power issues, which I have an idea for that. Job growth, which again, have an initiative for that. It's all about kind of maintaining a balance between what we need, what we want, and what we're trying to achieve and reach out for. So that kind of will lead into my last initiative. It's called the Texas Voice Initiative. What it's designed to do is give people the power to actually sit at the governor's table. Um, it's a voluntary system where you can log into it. You can talk about the issues that are going on in your community. whether it's water, whether it's power, road issues, school issues. One or two complaints isn't designed to flag the system, but 500, 1,000, 1,500 complaints or issues within that community definitely will flag the system and will allow the governor's office to come down to that zip code or that community, not take over, but go to the individuals that are leading and saying, hey, we got 1,500 people complaining about this one issue. What are the resources we need to fix that issue? And let's fix it right now before it turns into a crisis where we're going to end up spending hundreds of millions of dollars to fix it. That question that you just asked can feed into that by addressing what each community is experiencing, what they need, and then coming up with solutions to solve it. Like I said, round peg into a square hole isn't always going to work, and every community is going to have their own issues. And I believe the Texas Voice Initiative will actually solve the break between the people and the leadership. Because I think, even from my experiences of dealing with the school district and what I had to go through, is that once I started communicating with my congressman, with my senator, and even going all the way up to the attorney general's office with my issue, it seemed like everything kind of just stopped. The listening stopped. And that's one thing that I want to address is that specific issue. And I want to give the people a voice in their government when right now they may feel like they are muted or silenced.
Now, before we end this interview, is there anything else you'd like to mention? Anything we might have glossed over you'd like to talk about?
Well, I think for myself, I believe a well-educated populace will make well-educated decisions. And that's one of the reasons why I created my website. My website is designed so that way the people can actually see the laws that are being introduced and they can actually do something about it. I tell you the questions to ask to identify the poison pills yourself. I teach you exactly how to go through 300 pages of documents in 5 minutes, just without having to do the massive amounts of reading and research that I had to do. I try to give the people as much power and information as possible because I believe power is the information that we receive. And if you have as much of it as possible, then you can ask your legislators the questions as to why they introduced the bill that they did, why it was changed so much, and they can actually do or ask the questions to demand a change. That's why I created my website. The only other thing that I have to say is that I am a constitutionalist and I am a patriot, and I believe in our First Amendment rights as well as our second. I believe in all of them. And right now, with what I'm going through, when the school district muted my microphone, the case that I submitted, which is now in federal court, where I'm arguing your First Amendment rights in the digital domain, is not something that should be overlooked. Our voices matter, and all of our experiences can change the course of every single thing that's put in front of us. And if I'm elected to be governor, I believe that the voice of the people is what will drive me to figure out the best solutions. As my command sergeant major once told me, stop bringing me problems without solutions. I don't care if they're stupid solutions, just bring me a solution. And I found through that even my stupid solutions would oftentimes solve a problem that I wasn't even looking at just right. That's how I believe the Texas people can help me and how I can help them.
All right. Well, Stephen Samuelson, thank you so much for your time here. He is running for the Republican nomination for governor. And as we know, early voting starts on Tuesday. Stephen, thank you so much for your time. You have a good one.
Thank you for your time. Thank you.
All right. Well, with that, let's go ahead and now head into a quick commercial break. We will be right back here with more in just a moment on East Texas Now. Stay tuned.